Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys football coming out of spring practice, coming out of some monster spring transfer portal window additions. Where does this Oklahoma depth chart sit heading into fall camp, heading into 2025? These are some of my favorite offseason episodes to do. Before we get into the nitty gritty conversation in terms of where these players might stack up, I want to start with one thing, and that is coming out of spring practice, I thought we heard all the right things about all the right players going into 2025. And what I mean by that is, hey, we had some question marks about this Oklahoma team. Hey, do we have enough good pass catchers around John Mateer? Is the offensive line good enough? Like, go back to what we heard in spring practice. Jacob Sexton, Jake Taylor, both of them, highly recruited kids out of high school, guys that haven't necessarily putting it together in Norman yet. They both stayed healthy, and they both sounded like they had their best spring practice to date in Norman. Derek Simmons, FCS transfer coming up to the SEC ranks. Everything you heard out of spring practice was that's an SEC caliber offensive lineman. Oklahoma went to the portal last year to address the offensive line and largely missed with guys like Spencer Brown, guys like Michael Tarquin. It sounds like Oklahoma hit on the winter transfer portal additions on the offensive line. And the last thing is, how about this wide receiver room? Like, for me, going into spring practice, it was a question mark. Outside of Deion Burks, there wasn't a ton of proven commodities in this room. Giovanni Gibson, I know, suffered an injury in the back half of spring practice. He sounded like a legitimate dude going into 2025, and I think he's going to be a legitimate difference maker for Oklahoma going into 2025. How about a guy like Isaiah Satania coming from Arkansas? Heard really good things about him as well. The questions that we had for this Oklahoma team, I'm not saying they got answered in spring practice. Like, they got to answer. It's going to be answered in 2025 on the football field. But coming out of spring, I thought you heard the right things about the players you needed to hear right things about. Coming out of spring practice, fired up to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, number one to the Oklahoma fans, y'all let it fly in the comment section. There are a lot of positions where I don't feel great about how I kind of predicted the depth chart. If you're an Oklahoma fan listening to this on a Saturday morning in May, chances are you got some takes as well. Let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. It truly has been a blast having some nitty gritty conversations about this Oklahoma team. Cannot thank you guys enough for all the support y'all have shown the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Many of y'all know I'm a Michigan fan. I can't wait for that week 2 matchup, Michigan-Oklahoma. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, John Mateer, quarterback one, no question about it. Can I just take a second to say two things? One, ton of respect for Mike Hawkins, staying the course. In this era of college football, you don't see a lot of quarterbacks stick around like Mike Hawkins did. I think this potential redshirt year where he's quarterback two, sitting behind John Mateer with an elite offensive coordinator, I think he could be awesome in 2026 for Oklahoma. He's one of those guys that just don't forget about him. We're all going to be talking about John Mateer for the next 6 months. This could be a really big next 6 to 12 months for Mike Hawkins going into 2026. And I think he's a very good fit for the Ben Arbuckle offense. Wide receiver position. I think you're pretty confident with Giovanni Gibson, Deion Burks, and Isaiah Satania being your top 3 wide receivers. Now, the interesting conversation here is that Deion Burks and Isaiah Satania kind of play similar roles, enjoying kind of working out of the slot. That's the benefit of having a difference maker like Deion Burks. A guy that you can put on the boundary in the slot. He allows you to get Isaiah Satania on the football field as well. Having a guy that, if Deion Burks could only play slot, Isaiah Satania is probably not getting on the field as much as you would want. I think that's a pretty solid trio of wide receivers that will be trotting out there for Oklahoma. Jermichael Carter from McNeese, I think he excites me. And I'm excited about some of the young wide receivers on this roster too, like Ivan Carrion, guy like Jacob Jordan. We left spring practice saying, hey, this wide receiver is probably in a better spot than we thought it was going to be at this time a couple months ago. We'll see how it shakes out on the football field. And I think one of the bigger storylines here is like when you have a quarterback like John Mateer, who is just a pure elevator of an offense. Like you're going to get the best out of the wide receivers around John Mateer. Running back position, Jaden Ott was massive. Jaden Ott was massive for a couple of different reasons. Like number one, when this kid is healthy, he's one of the best running backs in the country. Full stop. There's no question about that. The second thing that fires me up about this is he not a perfect fit for Ben Arbuckle? Like Jaden Ott might not be an elite running back for a team like Michigan that wants to run a lot of 12 personnel and work between the tackles. Ben Arbuckle wants his running backs operating in space a little bit more, catching the football out of the backfield. This is what I was so impressed with Jim Nagy is, hey, not only did we go out and land by far the best running back that we saw in the spring portal window, but we landed a running back that, man, he fits what Oklahoma wants to do on offense in a big-time way. Ben Arbuckle is one of the best offensive coordinators in the country in terms of getting his playmakers out in space with the football in their hands. Jaden Ott is one of those guys that you want with the football in space, making people miss. Really big spring transfer portal addition. Quite frankly, it's hard to make spring portal additions that really impact your team in 2025. I thought Oklahoma did that with Jaden Ott. And then the question is, all right, who's the other running back that emerges? Like we know we have our true running back one. Is it going to be Xavier Robinson? Is it going to be a guy like Taylor Tatum going into year two? But you know you have your running back one where, 2 months ago you weren't really sure who that running back one was going to be. Offensive line, we'll go to the tight ends first. And I know Oklahoma was kicking around some tight ends. I think the reason you didn't see Oklahoma go all out for a tight end is it's just not a massive position of importance, you might say. Like go back to the Ben Arbuckle offenses at Washington State. It's not like we don't use a tight end, but tight ends are not the feature in the offense like it has been at times for the Oklahoma offense over the last couple of years. And so as much as maybe you wanted to go add one more tight end, when I look at this depth chart, I don't know if having an elite tight end is super important for Ben Arbuckle on the offensive side of the football. And I think you have some solid ones. And I think we're all excited to see what Jaren Kanak looks like at tight end for Oklahoma in 2025. The offensive line, this is to me the biggest storyline of this football team. If you were to tell me here, and we're sitting here and it's May 3rd, and you were to tell me, hey, we're going to have a above average offensive line in the SEC in 2025. That's all I need. I don't expect this Oklahoma offensive line to be the best in the country. I don't need this Oklahoma offensive line to be the best in the country. I just can't have it be a liability like it was in the 2024 season. If that's what we get, it completely changes how I look at this Oklahoma team. Now, this is what excites me the most is number one, Oklahoma has seemed to have found their rotation. Like they kind of worked with the same starting five in the back half of spring practice pretty damn consistently. Far cry from what was happening 12 months ago, where it's just like musical chairs. We're throwing different combinations on the offensive line and just hoping one of them sticks. You saw that carry out in the 2024 season where did Oklahoma have the same starting five one time or like back-to-back games in the 2024? You don't think you saw that. They were just consistently shuffling the deck, obviously struggled with some injuries as well. What excites me the most is coming out of spring, I think you have a decent feel for, hey, this is going to be our starting five kicking off in the 2025 year. Then the second thing is, hey, Jacob Sexton, Jake Taylor, like putting together good spring practices. Michael Fasusi and Derek Simmons, they sound like they can contribute year one with Oklahoma in 2025. Like I had question marks about Derek Simmons being a starting caliber tackle in the SEC. Now I still might have those question marks, but coming out of spring, you heard really good things from Derek Simmons. Michael Fasusi is, at least sounds like, he's ready to play at the very least as a depth piece for this Oklahoma offense in the 2025 year as well. I think it's a deeper unit, and I think, quite frankly, it's just a better unit going into 2025. And if you get that, man, the sky's the limit for this Oklahoma team because you go over to the defensive side of the football and say, I fully expect this defense to be one of the best in the SEC, if not the best. Now, I know that's kind of maybe a hot take, but it wasn't all that far from the truth in 2024. Nobody really talked about how good the defense was because the offense struggled so much. And, at times the numbers for this defense weren't great because they were playing opposite an offense that was turning the football over and not staying on the field. When you don't have an offense that's pulling their weight, at some point, the defense is going to crack. If this Oklahoma offense can just be better than what it was in 2025, or what it was in 2024, I would expect this Oklahoma defense to be better going into 2025. I've been very vocal that I think the national media is making a really big deal about guys like Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman, who were, two of the best players on this defense last year leaving the program. I think they have the guys to replace that. And that's again not a shot at Danny Stutzman or Billy Bowman, like two focal guys on that defense over the last couple of years. I just think they have the guys that I don't think there's going to be the drop off that many people think. Now, when you look at this Oklahoma defense and say, all right, what do we get excited about the most? To me, it's the depth and the rotation in the middle of this defensive line. In this era of college football, it's so hard to hold on to your quality depth along the lines of scrimmage. And it's something that separates good teams from great teams. Will we see a better group of four in the middle of that defensive line than Jaden Jackson, Dominic Williams, Grayson Halton, and David Stone? I personally don't think so. Like, there's just not many better two deeps in the middle of that defensive line than what Oklahoma is going to be trotting out. And they complement each other really well, too, right? Jaden Jackson, Dominic Williams, hammers against the run. Grayson Halton and David Stone, probably a little bit more juice in the pass rush. Like Grayson Halton, one of the better interior defensive line pass rushers that we see in the country. The story for this Oklahoma defensive line as a whole is, can you have certain players reach their potential? David Stone. Look, I think there's a reason Oklahoma fought like heck to keep David Stone in Norman, because I think they knew he was kind of taking a step going into year two. That's what we heard from this kid coming out of spring practice. PJ Adibare going into year three. This was kind of the year that we pegged for PJ to kind of be a all-conference guy. Can he be that guy? What about Danny Okoye going into year two? Another one of these freaky traits guys that you knew it wasn't going to be year one because you knew development needed to take place. Can he make that happen going into year two? We know this Oklahoma defensive line is going to be good. David Stone, PJ, Danny Okoye, if those guys take that step, this defensive line can be potentially elite in the 2025 year. Then you look at the off-ball linebacker position and say Oklahoma's kind of in a pickle, but it's a good pickle to be in. And that is, hey, Kobe McKenzie, Kip Lewis, Kendall Daniels. We're probably only going to play two linebackers because we're going to play with that cheat on the football field. How can we get all three of these guys on the football field at the same time? Maybe that looks like Kendall Daniels playing that cheetah position of which he can play. Now, I don't know if you want to take Kendall Doby off the field. What I look at, I'm saying, hey, we got a bunch of really good football players. We got to figure out how to get them all on the football field at the same time. I think Kobe McKenzie and Kip Lewis are flying under the radar in a big-time way. We talked a lot about Danny Stutzman over the last couple of years at that linebacker position, and rightfully so. He's one of the best in the country. We just kind of ignored the fact that, not ignored, but like Kip Lewis and Kobe McKenzie have just been getting better as football players playing next to Danny Stutzman. I think this linebacker room has the chance to be very good, and Brent Venables, coach drilling it, be working with these guys. It should be a good unit. Then in the secondary, it's a little bit young, but man, you love what you have in terms of the young talent on your roster. I mean, Peyton Bowen going into year three, I know they're really fired up about Mike Boganowski. You have some veteran presences, guys like Kendall Doby, Robert Spears-Jennings. I guess what I'll say for Oklahoma fans is the two big question marks we have are on the offensive line and the pass catchers. If those two positions can be solid units in 2025, where are the glaring holes on this roster? You don't have one on defense, at least in my opinion. You have one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC in John Mateer. There are some question marks that Oklahoma has to answer early in 2025. No question mark about it. If those questions get answered, this Oklahoma team can be really dangerous. We saw some movement in spring practice in terms of the depth chart. Guys kind of working their way up. This is This is probably where I see it right now going into fall camp. We'll kind of update it again as we go into the 2025 year. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. To the Oklahoma fans, y'all let it fly in the comment section. I'm sure many of y'all have some takes. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.